How you doing? How's business? Business doing all right?
Yeah, business doing all right.
What's your name?
My name is Han.
How are you?
I'm here and I'm so
Good to
excited.
see you. Well, give me a hug. I'm glad you're excited. I'm excited.
Can we get a picture?
Yes, you
can.
can.
Oh my gosh, it's like the best day of my life.
Yeah, you gotta get in there, right?
Come on, Ryan.
Come on.
Oh, Pat, do you want one too?
Come on, Pat. He'll take it. He'll take it.
Oh my gosh.
Come
Someone's gonna think you're like wax.
What's going on, guys? How are you, sir? Nice to see you. You know, it's good to be out. I bet. The bear is loose.
The bear is loose, he said. This has sort of been the summer of unscripted, unscheduled presidential moments. Starting in May, President Obama started doing these things out in public that are not on his schedule. And the people around him don't seem to know to expect. Hopping out of his motorcade and walking over to the Interior Department instead of driving, seeing people along the way, going on an impromptu Starbucks run in Washington, D.C. The very next day, ducking into a restaurant that was not expecting him. The bear is loose, the president says, when he has these little impromptu public moments. And then last night, ahead of his trip to Texas today, the bear was very, very loose in Colorado, specifically in Denver. The president did an unscheduled walk around in downtown Denver, shook a lot of people's hands. He made small talk with kids about what grade they were going into in school in the fall, to the evident alarm of at least, look at the Secret Service guy on the right. The evident alarm of one Secret Service guy, the president shook hands randomly with a guy who was wearing a horse head mask. And remember, this was not an announced event, so it's not like the guy, woke up yesterday and thought, I'm going to meet the president tomorrow. Better remember my horse head. No, this is a guy who happened to have the horse head on him when the president unexpectedly came by. Hey, Denver. In the evening, President Obama played pool with Governor John Hickenlooper in a bar that the governor used to own. Obviously, these shots of them playing pool, they're sort of in a roped-off area. They're not too mobbed. But the president did have to push through the crowd a little bit at one point, which is where a guy shouted out a question to President Obama about whether he wanted to take a hit of some legal recreational Colorado marijuana. Then the guy posted on Instagram the president laughing in response to his question.
Here we go, bro. Green team! Green team! You want a headband?
President Obama very off script last night on this trip to Colorado, including the awkward but inevitable pot question in that state that is now doing tens of millions of dollars a month in newly legalized pot sales. But the unscripted nature of the president's time on the street and out and about in Denver, it also led to one very serious moment, which pool reporters said left the woman who spoke to the president a little teary, not upset after this conversation happened, but she was tearful after this exchange with President Obama.
How are you? Good. Kaylin, my brother died in Afghanistan 4 years ago.
I'm so sorry. What was his name?
Sergeant Kenneth Jackson.
Yeah. The older brother?
Older brother. Only brother.
Still hard to hear.
Yes.
Think about it.
We're only good.
It's an unbelievable sacrifice.
Thank you.
Marvin, do you have one more coin?
Could I go right after this?
As a thank you, I only give this to vets or active servicemen. So this will be relevant. All right.
That woman's name is Kaylin May Eric. She's from Tyler, Texas. Her brother is Marine Sergeant Kenneth May, who was killed in Afghanistan in 2010. And what the president gave her and said, this is for your brother, that's called, it's a challenge coin. Like this one, which is a mark of respect and camaraderie among service members and veterans, and also sometimes the commander-in-chief. So in the middle of this, hurly-burly, off-script, bear is loose kind of evening in Colorado, there was this one very sobering, serious face-to-face moment about the wars and about a Marine sergeant lost to the war. Here's the thing, though. We are still in the midst right now of a very real crisis on how we are handling veterans issues. I mean, the thing that everybody was talking about just a few weeks ago has still not been fixed in terms of veterans issues. It's still been, it's been more than a month since VA Secretary Eric Shinseki resigned over the crisis in veterans health care. It's now been nearly a month since the Senate came together in this kind of magical crisis moment where they were willing to stop being petty for a second, and they did pass a big comprehensive bipartisan veterans bill to try and fix veterans health care. That was the bill that was written in that atmosphere of crisis by cranky conservative Senator John McCain and cranky liberal Senator Bernie Sanders. It was a strange pairing, right? But they were able to come together on this issue in the midst of crisis, and their bill passed the Senate by a vote of 93-3. In the midst of all that criticism on the way veterans are being treated, all that media attention, all that outrage being voiced on Capitol Hill, that bill passed 93-3. They fast-tracked it on Capitol Hill. It was flying through Washington. It was on its way to the president's desk. They told us it was going to get passed. That was nearly a month ago. But it never made it to the president's desk. It got stuck in a conference committee where they are trying to iron out differences between the bill passed by the Senate and the bill passed by the House. It's stuck. Apparently, it is bottlenecked there because of some Republican complaints about the bill's cost. See, when the attention is there and everybody's complaining about how something must be done, it's very easy to demand, in theory, that this must be done. No expense spared. This is a sacred obligation that we're violating. We have to fix it. Right? Sounds great. Print it. Put it in a campaign ad, right? But when it comes to actually doing it, when it comes to actually putting your money where your mouth is, apparently so far the answer is no. We don't actually want to spend the money. We want to be quoted saying the money should be spent, but then we don't want to actually spend it. This thing passed the Senate on June 11th. And when it passed by that huge margin, it looked like it was done, but it apparently is not done because some objections are now objecting to paying for it. And so Senator Bernie Sanders has now gone back to the Senate floor because he has found that he still has to make the case for this. Still.
And let me just say this as we continue to proceed. If there's anything that I've learned since I've been chairman of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs is that I think as a people, as a nation, we underestimate the cost of war. And before anyone votes to go to war again, I think they should fully appreciate what the repercussions of that vote are. Several weeks ago, Senator McCain and I put together a proposal to deal with the current crises at the VA, and I'm very proud that that legislation passed the Senate by a vote of 93-3. Now, what are we dealing with? What are we dealing with, and what's the cost of this proposal? This is an expensive proposal because the cost of war is expensive.
Didn't you think that this was done? Didn't you think that this was done after that whole crisis and Shinseki resigning and that bill passing? I mean, that's Bernie Sanders and John McCain, of all people. If they could get together on this, and the Senate agreed 93-3 to go with them on this, didn't you think that this was done? This is not done. And since Eric Shinseki resigned more than a month ago, what that means is that there is no one running the VA right now. The nominee to replace him has not been confirmed. And there is more legislation on preventing veteran suicide that's going to get a hearing tomorrow in the House. And members of Congress love to go to hearings on issues like this. They love talking about veterans issues and appearing to be concerned about veterans issues. There's a ton of political capital in wrapping yourself up in veterans issues. Apparently, there is less political capital in actually doing anything substantive to help veterans, like passing legislation instead of just talking about it. We will see how that goes with that suicide bill that gets the hearing in the House tomorrow. We are already seeing, though, how it is going with the big VA bill that everybody thought was going to solve some of those problems. But right now, while this crisis is still happening, all of Washington's flagrant and shameless lip service on veterans issues is not being matched at all with action.